to the Seahawks 360 podcast, a Sports Ethos production, where we look at the Seahawks from every angle every week. I'm your host, Candace Higgins.
And I'm Tino Ganasius.
We are back to discuss the Seahawks roster. The draft is over now, and this is sort of really the downtime of the offseason. There's really not too much happening. There was rookie minicamp, but there didn't seem to be too many takeaways. I didn't hear a ton from there. Some interesting tidbits, maybe from press interviews that we can talk about that a little bit later if we like. But today we want to kind of take a look at the holistic picture of what the Seahawks roster looks like right now. With the new draft picks and sort of comparing that in this new Mike Macdonald era to what the roster looked like around this time last year going into the season. So we're going to start with the offense. We're going to start with the offense, going to the defense, and we'll answer the question for you. Is the group for better or for worse? So let's get started. Okay, let's start with the easy, well, maybe not the easy stuff, but it's pretty simple. I think it's the least amount of breakdown probably required. We'll start with the quarterback room because our starting quarterback is the same. So we're really just talking about the difference in backups here. Tino, I'll let you start off first. Right now, last year, of course, we had Geno, we had Drew Lock. I know Drew Lock was your guy.
Do not go there. I didn't mind him as much as you did. Let's put it that way.
Okay. All right, fair enough. All right, so now we have Geno and Sam Howell, who we traded for in the offseason for a third-round pick, I believe. I'll let you go first before I give my thoughts on sort of the difference between, I guess, Howell and Locke is played.
So I think this quarterback room is in great shape, honestly. Had the Seahawks picked a quarterback high in this year's draft, I wouldn't have minded it. But Sam Howell's 23 years old, and there was competition in trading for Sam Howell. There are a number of teams, including the Rams, who had interest in him. He's a gunslinger. He's tough as nails. He's a leader. And I think that he is an upgrade over Drew Lock. I know I supported Drew Lock last season. I do find it interesting that there are some folks who believe that Drew Lock may actually win that New York Giants starting job over Daniel Jones, or there's a potential for that to happen. Because he's seen as an equivalent quarterback by a lot of people. Jones will probably hold the job because of his salary, but I do think that speaks to the fact that Drew Lock isn't terrible. But Sam Howell is the quarterback of the future, in my opinion. And what I will find interesting in Howell is, he had this gunslinger mentality, right? He threw, I think, 20 plus picks last season, but he has talent. He was rumored as a potential number one pick going into his final year at North Carolina. And the big thing is Mike Macdonald is going to preach ball control and taking care of the football, right? It's going to be a lot of, big defense. Don't turn the ball over on offense. If they can work with Sam Howell to take away some of those chances that he takes in terms of trying to throw in the tight windows and whatnot and creating picks, I think he can become a very solid quarterback for the Seahawks for a very long time. Now, as far as this season goes, I love Geno. I'm on record saying that I love Geno. I think it's great that he's there. I would expect to see him at minimum this year as a starter, potentially 2 years. But I'm happy with Sam Howell. I think this room looks good, and I'm glad that they did what they did with their resources.
Yeah, that's you. Quarterback of the future is a really interesting comment. I think I would come back to elaborate on that. I'm not sure if I see how in the same way, but obviously the Seahawks tend to agree with you more likely since they were willing to trade the third round pick for him, which I think the Seahawks kind of missed when it actually came to draft time. But I do like how I like his upside more than I think Locke had. He's 4 years younger, so he's got a lot more upside. This is his second. I mean, he really didn't play too much his first year, so this really last year was his first true opportunity to really show what he can be as a quarterback. And they have similarities. So if you were a Drew Lock fan, then Howell brings you some of the same qualities for good and for bad, I believe, in terms of the gunslinger mentality. But comparing the two, I sort of just kind of wanted to do some comparisons between the two guys in their second year because both of them played, large portions of their sophomore year. And Howell threw for about 1,000 more yards. And part of that may have to do with today's game, but I also just think that he was just able to air it out more. And he was able to do so for well, a higher completion percentage. So he's able to complete 63% of his throws compared to Drew Lock's 57. So I think his floor is slightly higher, but they did have the same touchdown percentage. They had the same interception percentage. So in terms of issues, like I said, the problems are similar, but I do like Howell's upside. And he was dealing with some tough circumstances with the Washington Commanders. Just be honest about that. He got sacked a ton compared to Drew Lock. Drew Lock didn't really have a ton of sacks at all, and Howell was running for his life at pretty much all times. That offensive line was literally like league worst, and so I'm curious to see what he can do with a slightly better offensive line. Seeing how he does with obviously better weapons and practice. And I don't know if we'll get to see a ton of Sam Howell. Ideally, you'd like to just have your starter. But I agree with you that this room, in my opinion, is better because I think that your depth improved. I think that I think last season there were a lot of questions about Geno because of how his season, you know, sort of, and he started off hot and then he trailed off in the end. And last year was sort of the opposite effect, right? He really ended, I think, on a high note despite some circumstances. But I do think that between the 2 years, there's a clearly defined floor that Geno can bring you that I think people question, right? Like how bad can Geno Smith be? Can Geno really Geno this up? I think he's shown that he's a clear better player than his reputation originally preceded him. I think he's at least a 500 quarterback. I think that's it at worst. But I think at best, I think he can give you top 10 performances. Now, can he perform at a top 10 level consistently? I don't think so. And I think that's sort of what makes him maybe not the franchise guy per se. But I think it's what makes him able to take this team on a potentially deep playoff run if he has the right pieces around him. And I think that both of these quarterbacks need that. But I think that's a good place to be. I'm really curious, just as a side note, to see what happens in this new middle tier quarterback era. It was completely irrelevant for years, and I think between your Baker Mayfields now, I think your Geno Smiths, I think there's just some guys on the rise that are maybe not just considered the elite, top tier guys, but you can do more to build a team around them. I mean, yeah, Brock Purdy, but he's still on that rookie contract, so that sort of like it counts, but it doesn't. I'm really looking at the guys who are on their second contracts, right? That you're not paying a ton of money to, but you're also like not on a rookie deal either. So anyway, we'll really like to see what this year evolves and brings in that regard, because I think it's an interesting trend that the Seahawks are on that could potentially be on the upswing of things. I think there's a lot of potential reward in doing this strategy, and we'll see if it pays dividends or not.
One thing to add too with just the kind of succession planning is this upcoming quarterback draft is bad, right? It's Carson Beck from Georgia. It's Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. There aren't real quarterbacks coming up this next season. So if you are of the opinion that you don't want a rookie to start, right? Yeah. And this class in 25 is going to be bad, then
I like Sanders, but yeah,
I don't know if I want him to be my franchise quarterback. I like some of the stuff he represents and some of the stuff that some of the lines they're pushing with that program. But as far as the Seahawks being a sustainable playoff team for years, I think the idea that Geno Smith goes until the wheels fall off and you have Sam Howell there still in his mid-20s to take over is the best plan given the quarterbacks who are coming out. Now, if this last year's quarterback class was going to be this year or in 26, then I think it might look a little different. But if you have to project a couple of years with that position.
I agree with you. I think I like I'm not sure how I feel about Sam Howell as the guy of the future. Maybe I'm not as sold as you. I think he's I think he gives you a floor, at least, like you said about with the question marks in the upcoming quarterback classes. What does that look like? But I would still probably like them to draft somebody else, maybe in the 26th year or something like that. But I think he gives you contingency where you're not forced to reach on a guy. And if nothing else, I think I appreciate that, just not being forced to reach unnecessarily just to fill a void. I think that is smart. Even if I'm not really convinced that Howell is that guy, I'll take him. And I think he will learn and grow into Geno. I think Geno is good in that way. So clear improvement in my opinion. I think a smart move to go younger, especially if you're keeping Geno Smith as your starter. You absolutely kind of needed to get, not kind of, you needed to get younger at that position. And I
Mhm.
just don't think that Drew Lock, as he's aging, has given you enough upside to warrant continuing to pay him what his salary was going to be, quite frankly. So
Mhm.
let's move on to the running back room. You just mentioned that our quarterbacks really in this Mike McDonald system, you're pretty adamant there's just going to be ball control, which I'm not as adamant that that's the case, given that Ryan Gruff is the offensive coordinator. But I hear you in theory. I think the philosophy will be there, even if it's executed, I don't know, a little different. I'm not sure to be super ball control, but we'll see. But the running backs are really important, right? Obviously, because of that, there is going to be balance. I think that no matter what, I think this will be a balanced team. I don't think they'll be super heavy in either. I hope that they're not super heavy in either way. That they can really learn how to merge your run game and your pass game together, where they complement one another, and you can really be versatile at both. That's
Mhm.
really what I would like to see, personal preference wise. And so I'm curious as to your thoughts. This year we have Walker Charbonnet and McIntosh, when really the room was the same. The only real difference between this year and last year is the subtraction of DJ Dallas, which depending upon how you feel is good or bad.
Mhm.
For me, it was a little tough. It was this one I struggled with. Like, is this roster better or worse? I'm going to go with better. This running back room simply because I really think that McIntosh can fill in a good void. I think he can give you more upside than DJ Dallas got you. I think Charbonnet can get more reps than he did last year, and I think DJ Dallas sort of took some opportunities away from Zach Charbonnet that I
Mhm.
think he really could have blocked. I think that 1-2 tandem would have been really excellent had they just, I mean, it showed flashes every time they used it. It just, they went away from it. And I think that was more of a coaching thing than it was a player personnel issue. So I'd love to see those guys get more reps. My only concern is the history of running backs in injury with this team. And you got three guys that you're depending on as your cornerstone guys instead of, and we've seen years where we've had 4 or 5 guys and then everybody went down.
Mhm.
That is a little nerve wracking, but in today's age where running backs are a dime a dozen, quite frankly, I'm not gonna have that impact my overall opinion enough to really dock them for it.
I think George Holani, the undrafted free agent signed out of Boise State, makes this team. So
You
I like
do.
McIntosh. I like McIntosh a lot. I think
Right.
McIntosh is incredibly explosive, right?
Mhm.
We all know he's super fast. He provides something very different than DJ Dallas did.
Right.
I agree. I agree with you. I think whatever is going to replace Dallas is an upgrade. I don't know what Pete's fascination was with him, but he was slow. He wasn't explosive. You thought he was dependable until he started fumbling. Like he wasn't my dude either.
Right.
But here's the thing. So McIntosh is unproven but super fast and has been.
Right.
We got the top two. We know what we have in them. George Holani, so tailback, Boise State, 5'10", 208. He ran a 4.52, which for a running back isn't bad. 39-inch vertical, 10.7 broad jump, 24 reps in the bench press, produced at Boise State. He is, to me, a potentially better version of DJ Dallas in that he's
Okay.
solidly built, right? He's fast enough. He's strong. He was dependable at Boise State. And for me, they're going to need 4 backs, right? They're going to need I think they're going to need 4 backs. And I think it'll come down to Holani or keeping that extra wide receiver. And if the Seahawks decide that McIntosh is going to be a part of the return team at all or special teams, then you're certainly, I think, going to need to keep a fourth. So I would keep an eye on him. I think Walker and Charbonnet are both great. I think that it's pretty self-explanatory. I would expect similar production from the two of them as they gave per game last season. You may see Charbonnet get a few more carries and a few more reps just because he's more comfortable and obviously incredibly explosive. But I like this room. I think this room is better because Holani and McIntosh have more upside potential than Dallas does. I think if there's injury, I feel more comfortable with those two coming in than I would with DJ Dallas. But the reality is Walker and Charbonnet are going to take 95% of the reps as it is. So to me, it's pretty much the same room as long as they stay healthy.
I can't count on running back staying healthy, so I think you just have to build that in as a caveat. I really do. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just kind of the reality. They have so
Right.
much. I think they're put in such harm's way more so than maybe any other position in football. I would say. Um, and so because of that, I think you count on that. I really hope that McIntosh can step up. It seems like they're counting on him to be
Mhm.
able to step up to be a consistent rotation guy because I think he's going to get some snaps regardless. I am curious though, from a blocking standpoint, I think that seems to be a real weakness on this team, except for maybe Charbonnet, who I think is probably, from what I can see, the best upside. But even
Mhm.
he is sort of below average, I think, in that department, unless he's grown in that area over the offseason, which is possible. Do you have any thoughts on just Halani and his game? If that's something he can potentially
Yeah.
add, or is that a struggle for him as well?
No, solid dude, right? Solid dude who, like I said, I think he is a close comparison to DJ Dallas, but younger and more explosive.
Okay.
And I think you can count on him to be, I didn't you can count on him to be kind of assignment accurate,
Yeah.
right? It's something I'll bring up later on the podcast, but I think he's dependable, and that's kind of what you want once you get that low on the depth chart. And I think you're right. Like, K9's ability to pass block isn't great, right? You'd rather him go out, have a route and be a threat to take a defender away than you would to have him stand in there and be stout. Charbonnet, I think, can do it, and is stout enough to do it. But we'll see. What the interesting part is, we're guessing right now. We don't know what this offense is going to look like at all. And so who knows whether they're going to be asked to do that much. Who knows if Ryan Grubb at Washington was a product of having Penix and three, top 3 round receivers, or his pedigree, his history says he loves the running game. That's where he kind of made his way. And so I'm super fascinated to see what this offense does. I just know how conservative Mike Macdonald is as a coach, which is why I'm assuming that it's going to be not risk-free, but because you can't do that with DK, you got to take shots with DK. But I'm going to enjoy this. I'm just telling you that right now. Running the ball, I'm going to
Let
enjoy
me,
it.
let me ask you. Well, you don't really know Mike McDonald as a coach. You know him as a defensive coordinator, and I think that's very different.
Yes, but if you look at Christian Haynes and you look at Laumea and you look at Barner and you start to think about this team that they're putting together, right? To me, those guys scream run game. Those guys scream, we're going to run you over, right? And you look at the way Baltimore played and you look at the way Michigan played. And to me, that's just in his DNA. He's a Harbaugh through and through. And those dudes run the ball. Jim Harbaugh, as we all know, is the most run the ball up your of like any coach around. He's old school like that. So I would be surprised if I expect them to try to be balanced, right? That's how you win. We all know that. You have to be balanced.
Right.
But I think we're going to run the ball more than people expect. I think he's going to want this defense to be as explosive as possible, right? He's going to value time of possession. He's trying to do that anti-Rams sort of thing, right? Or the anti-Niners sort of thing, where we're going to keep the ball, we're going to play great defense, we're going to keep the defense fresh, and we're going to shut you down, right? Zigging when everybody else is zagging. That's what I expect. But again, game one, I'm going to be so pumped to see how they come out and what they choose to do. Because you still have JSN, Lockett, Metcalf, right? You got this explosiveness on the outside that you need to take advantage of.
Yeah, that's what makes me think. I think it'll be more. But I think they did, and they will. They address the run game. I think I agree that the personnel speaks to the run game, but also that was a real weakness on this team, the run game. And so it's a little hard because in one sense I agree with you, but I can also just see a world where those were legitimate needs in terms of building your roster if you wanted to have balance anyway. Like they needed some more. They didn't have anybody that was really capable in the run. You couldn't get holes from
Right.
that offensive line. We talked about that all last season. That was a real problem. And so even if you just want balance, you were going to have to address getting some guys who were some road graders. And I also, it's a little hard because while Baltimore, yes, they're running the team, they were more pass heavy last year. And so I don't know. I think there will be running the ball. There's no question about that. I mean, they're not going to be the Chiefs. It's not
Right.
at all what I think that they'll be, but I do think that they will be remiss to ignore the true depth that I think they have at the wide receiver position. And I think Gruff is imaginative enough that he can find ways
Hmm.
to hyperbolize, or not hyperbolize, but to maximize
Hmm.
both areas. And so we'll see. I think I'm pumped too. And I think they got the running backs to make the running game versatile. If they are doing the running, if they are leaning heavy into the run game, I do think in this division they're going to have to be creative about it. There's no question because you just can't just run up the A gap against this Rams. They beefed up in the trenches.
Hmm.
The Arizona Cardinals are better. We'll talk about that maybe in another episode. But if you're going to do that, be inventive because because I think teams are kind of expect that
Right.
anyway, especially just from the Seahawks, given their history throughout the years in general. Okay, but speaking of weapons on the outside, let's talk a little bit about the wide receiver room and what that looks like right now.
Hmm.
It's not at the top, right? I don't think that changes very much. I think you got Metcalf, you got Locke, you got JSN. Is there a shift between does JSN take in more of a wide receiver two role than a wide
Yes.
receiver three? I'm really
Yes.
interested to see what that looks like
Yeah.
because it might change. I think you've got Bo Young, who was on the team last year, but you got year two of him. Derek Young, who spent most of, not all, I think most of the season injured. So he didn't really get a ton of play time, but I like Derek Young and John Snyder has specifically brought him up like last offseason. He just kind of unprompted brought him up as a guy that he really wanted to count on to depend on. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. D. Eskridge is still on this roster for reasons unknown to me. But but
He's
he is
fast. He's fast.
whatever, man. But I feel like you can find fast wide receivers literally everywhere, like on a tree. But I will say because Pete Carroll is not in charge, I'm not as confident that he makes this roster. Like I listed him, but you've got guys like Winston, like Esau Winston Jr., who I think was able to play significant, well, not significant, but a small role here and there. I think he sort of proved himself, and I could easily see him overtaking him. I didn't go much further down the depth chart on that. There are other wide receivers that are listed. I'm just not sure how many of those guys will actually be making the team. I
Hmm.
think it might just come down, especially if they keep that fourth running back like you mentioned. Then I think it would come down to either D. Eskridge, Winston Jr., maybe one of those guys, and see.
Hmm.
But I really think your top four, or your top five really Metcalf, Lockett, JSN, Bobo, and Young.
See, I
Which
don't I don't see the same thing in Derek Young. I think that they also signed Laviska Shenault from
yes,
Carolina to be a return guy, right? The return rules have changed. Teams are going to prioritize return guys a lot more. Um,
you think he
I,
stays?
what's that?
You think he stays?
Yeah, so I think it comes down to Chenault or Eskridge.
Okay,
And I
no,
would expect that, because they play a similar role, which is basically not a good wide receiver, but are both really good in the return game, right?
guys,
Um,
guys, yeah.
and so they either keep both of those guys and maybe not keep a fourth running back, or they keep one of Chenault and Eskridge, let them compete, and then keep Holani as the fourth. Whatever the case is, I don't mind that much. I don't think that fifth receiver is getting on the field other than the return. Um, I like Bobo a lot. I do think we're going to see, as you said, I think JSN becomes the number two receiver. I think Tyler Lockett has lost some of what made him special. It might also be that he was great with Russell because Russell's deep ball was so great. But I think it's time to transition JSN into that wide receiver two role. He probably will still be in the slot in the three wide receiver sets, but I want to see him on the field more. I'm also really fascinated to see how Ryan Grubb's usage of DK Metcalf is different than it was with the previous offensive coordinators. Because to me, Metcalf is an untapped player, right? He's a player who I don't think we've given enough targets to. He's a player that completely changes the complexion of a defense. If you want to run the ball, you got to run play action to DK Metcalf at least 3 times a game, because the threat alone is taking the safety out of play. And now you have numbers in the box, right? Like, it's just whether you complete that pass or not, it's got to be done because he's such a threat, right? You got to get him the ball on the outside to be able to make stuff happen. He can drag 4 dudes for 20 yards. And I think Ryan Grubb I like him from what I saw at Washington, like him better than Shane Waldron. I think he's more creative. And I think they're going to find ways to get DK Metcalf involved that we haven't seen yet. And that to me is incredibly exciting. So the room itself is the same. I think JSN takes Tyler Lockett's role, but the top 3 are still very, very talented. I think probably a top 5 unit in football. I love Jake Bobo as the number 4. I think if we start talking about him as anything more than that, we're selling him too high. But the reality is, as a 4th receiver, as a dude that can block, as a dude that can come in and kind of post up in the end zone, that kind of thing, I like him. And then the return game, we'll see. We don't know what the new special teams coordinator is going to do. We don't know if DS Grizz is staying off the sauce. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know what's happening. But I like the room. I think the room is above average. And I'm excited to see how they're utilized. Look at how the UW receivers were utilized. Romo Dunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk. Like, that was a fun room to watch. That was a fun offense to watch. They don't have Michael Penix as the trigger man, so I think it looks a little bit different. But I am really, really interested to see the innovation specifically with Metcalf.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think the rumors of Tyler Lockett's demise is greatly exaggerated. I really think his decline in play last year comes down to a combination of having a true wide receiver 3 for one. Like, that's never been a thing. So his touches are far less, and his yards were going to be less, just simply by math. Like, that was gonna happen. I do think he's come up some short in some moments that I think we're used to seeing him like come up with the ball and be that security blanket. I think he struggled in some ways. Some of it, I do know he was fighting through some injury at times. Some of it, I think, has to do with just that offensive line. He's like just not having the time to make the connections. Because the same thing happened with DK. It's just, DK ultimately got more targets, so he still got the production, I think. But there were still plenty of moments where they looked off and their chemistry wasn't quite the same. Gino didn't have time to throw the ball. So maybe JSN, I think your case scenario is the best thing for the long-term future of the Seahawks. I think JSN being able to be in that number 2 role would change a lot, because there are questions about his ability to play on the outside, given his size, given his sort of speed. I'm interested to see if those are things he can overcome. I'm not necessarily convinced he can be a great number 2, to be honest. I think he can maybe be average, but I'm not sure he can be a really good number 2. I think that Lockett still might have him in that regard, but we'll see. I think they'll give him the opportunities in training camp because there's no reason not to. So that's another thing that's refreshing about going into this offseason, or being a part of this offseason, is just that there aren't these slotted things. Mike McDonald has no reason to see why JSN can't be the number 2. And so I think he'll get a truly fair chance. And if he isn't the number 2, it won't be for any other reason than he's just not as good as Tyler Lockett, which, I can see why that's disappointing to some. For me,
your point about Lockett, though, is I like, because he runs those like long developing routes deep, right? Where, it's, you need protection. At minimum, you need to run play action, but you need protection for those to develop. And he's best at, right? The little teardrop passes that come in just over the shoulder of the corner, and he comes out of nowhere to catch it. And you can't do that if Cross is hurt and Lucas is hurt and Smith is just under siege. And so I think that is a very fair point to make about Lockett's production. I also think about him like, I guess I'm showing my age, but Darrell Green, the Hall of Fame corner for the Redskins, he was running a 4.3 at like in his late 30s. He was one of those dudes that doesn't age. I just saw a clip of him on YouTube backpedaling at like 60 years old, and the back pedal was still smooth as hell, you know? And so Lockett could be one of those where he still maintains his speed and a lot of his athleticism. I just didn't see the same separation, and I didn't see the same, as you said, kind of clutch catches. And that isn't age necessarily, but the separation sometimes can be. So it'll be interesting to see whether, what was the cause of the down year. I do think JSN can play outside. I think he's a technician. He can make up for his lack of speed with some quickness and precise route running. And I do think I hope he's above average. We took him in the first round last year. He better be above average
I think they took him not because they saw him as a number 2, though. I think they took him because they saw him as a great complement to what this wide receiver room already was. And they talked about that when they drafted him, man. They didn't take that guy because they just really felt like he was the next Tyler Lockett. I mean, they really thought he could really maximize and open up their playbook, right? His usage could really make this offense explosive. And I think that included the trio of them. And maybe they project some outside qualities, but I think they really wanted to maximize their window to win right now and felt like he was the best guy on the board. Their position and all that stuff doesn't really matter as much to them, that he's a slot wide receiver. If that's what they saw him as, if he was the best that they had on the board, they were going to take him with this best player available strategy. And so, to me, even if they never saw him as a number 2, I'm still not mad at that pick because of because of the thought process, the logic, given the situation that the team was in at the time, and we're trying to contend, we're trying to take the next step type of mode. We need to be able to compete in an offensive landscape in a better way. I think that was wise regardless. So I'm not mad if he doesn't turn out to be anything more than an amazing slot wide receiver.
Sure. And everything is 3 wide receiver sets now anyways. Right. So you're always going to be on the field anyways.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Tight end.
Yep.
Definitely. I think I'll let you talk about the wide receiver room. I know you're super excited about AJ Barner and the vision that he brings. So we got him. We got Noah Fant that we re-signed him. We got Pharaoh Brown. We don't have Will Dissler anymore. We don't have Cody Parkinson anymore. So really, it's very different than it was before, but also similar. So what are your thoughts on the tight end room?
I like the balance. And that's, I guess, my theme across offense and defense is we just have more depth and more balance than we have. I think there's it's a very thoughtful roster construction this year, which sometimes I think we're just trying to pull athletes in and whoever we can get, and let's just get the most explosive dude. This room to me demonstrates the thoughtfulness of John Schneider in 2024, right? You got Noah Fant, who is the offense, the receiving threat, right? Runs a 4.5, can run down the seam, can run after the catch. Pharaoh Brown is probably an underrated receiver, but really is known for his blocking. And AJ Barner is balanced. And, I know people have labeled him as a bit of a inline kind of blocking type, but he caught the ball a ton at Indiana. And what he did after the catch with the ball at Michigan was great. And I want to talk about him for a minute, just because I heard a little part of the conversation that they had with him when they called him to let him know he was being picked. And he was mad that he was picked as low as he was. And he said, I want to come in. I'm not going to stop until I'm the best tight end. Like, I want to win championships. Like, I love players like that who are just ready to kind of bite someone's head off and get started and are coming with the chip on their shoulder. That's, to me, that resonates. And I think that's this I want for any team that I root for, whatever sport it might be. So in my mind, this room represents kind of the new approach of John Schneider to have balance in each room, to have different skill sets in each room, and to have a backup plan, right? If something happens to Fant, we're not reaching for any random dude. We're not putting George Fant at tight end like they did on occasion when he was here the first time, right? You can play, I'm serious, you can play AJ Barner. It was bad.
I
It was
forgot
just like,
about
we're just like, well, what are we going to do now? Like, what do you mean? What are you going to do now? You should have had another tight end in the room. They're not hard to find. So I love this room. I think that, I think Fant has some untapped potential that we might see capitalized on by Ryan Grubb as well. The other guy I want to mention, don't be surprised if Jake Westover, H-back from University of Washington, makes this team. Undrafted free agent. Just wait. Undrafted free. I'm telling you.
Oh, man.
No, here's why. But here's why. So undrafted free agent, thought he might get picked in the lower rounds. Was a complete security blanket for Michael Penix last season. Played really well. Very, very good blocker, right? More of a mobile blocker, not an inline tight end blocker, more of like an H-back type. Very good blocker in the run game. The big thing is he knows Ryan Grubb's offense, right? So if Ryan Grubb has a player who comes with him, who knows his offense and can help translate it to both the running back room and the tight end room, that's a huge advantage. So in my opinion, if they choose to keep 4 tight ends, Westover would be the 4th guy. Or in that Nick Bellore role of playing playing fullback at times, being a really good special teams guy. I'm telling you, Helani and Westover, write those names down. You look at me like
I'll bite on Helani.
You looking at me like I'm crazy.
I'll bite on Helani, man.
You.
We're not keeping 4 tight ends. It's just a numbers game because
have you seen how many tight ends the Harbaughs keep?
No, it's got too much depth at the defensive line, man. Now, is that a great case for him on the practice squad? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? I think for all those reasons he might make the practice squad. But I think
you talk about practice squad. Do you gamble?
Yeah.
Okay. So the odds are against Westover.
Yes.
But I'll put $20 against, or I'll put $5 against your 20 that Westover makes this team.
So wait.
So if Westover makes a team, you pay me $5. If Westover, you pay me $20. If Westover gets cut, I pay you $5.
No, why would I take that?
Why not? You're talking about Westover like it's the 40-year-old dude down the street from me right now.
No, it's not about his talent as a player. It really is about how you construct your roster, man. And that's going to affect your ability to have. They got all these cornerbacks, and you're telling me that they're going to decide to keep a 4th tight end.
You're gonna love Mike McDonald when it's all tight ends and linemen.
I don't think
we're throwing the ball 18 times a game. We're winning 10-3. You're going to love this.
He only spent 1 year in Michigan, right? Like, I know, like, I understand what you're trying to say, but, like, he spent way more time with the Ravens with the 1 year.
It's got the same philosophy, though. The Ravens, even though the Ravens threw the ball more, they're still.
They got 4 tight ends.
We can check.
They don't have 4 tight ends.
They might have 5 last year. Let's see.
You know what? Just because you said it, I'm going to pull this up. I can assure you that they don't have 4 tight ends on this roster, man.
And I would love it if they did.
I'm sure you would, but I don't think it makes sense just because of how your defense. We'll talk about the defense a little bit, but we got all these cornerbacks. We've got a much more quality depth at the defensive line position, and I think that's just going to matter more to Mike McDonald. Like, as much as I know they love like tight ends, we're talking about the defensive side that I think is going to affect now.
So, I guess my pushback is I don't see a 4th off-ball linebacker on this roster currently, right? And I know I'm jumping around, but I don't see a 4th off-ball linebacker. I think they keep 4 edges, not a 5th. I do think they're going to keep
cornerbacks. How?
Yeah, but I know you love some Artie Burns and those guys, but I don't know that they're keeping those dudes.
No, I don't know that they're keeping them either, but I'm just saying that they got a lot of depth there.
Jackson, Trey Brown makes
they redid Jackson, so he's staying. Sorry.
Pritchett's 5, James is 6. Who else they keep?
Mike's staying. I know you.
Burns? They keeping Burns?
No, I don't think they're keeping Burns. They got.
But that's 6. That's Reek, Spoon, Beat It, Trey Brown, Pritchett, James.
Okay, in your defensive line, which now has more depth as well. I just think it's a numbers game, man.
Leonard Williams, Draymond Jones, Jaron Reed, Hankins.
That's 3 tight ends.
Cam Young, Murphy, Morris, Maffei, Taylor, and Wosu Hall.
Ravens got three, man. They're not. Ravens got three.
Right now, you know why they got three? Because Mike McDonald left.
This is last year's. I checked last year's. You tried it though. That's really great. That's great. But I checked the 2023.
Hey, I'm excited. I'm excited when they keep 4 tight ends and they keep only 4 wide receivers and we keep 4 running backs. It's going to be good.
I think you think this is John Harbaugh's team, and I think that Mike McDonald's going to want a legacy of his own.
I'm taking us back to like 1985 Wishbone, Oklahoma against Nebraska.
You are, man. I'm telling you, Mike McDonald will have traits like those guys. I agree with you, but I also really think he's going to want to be his own guy. And as much as he talks about growth mindset and continuing to look for those edges, man, I don't think he's going to be stuck in those boxes. You know what I mean? Like those really are like stuck in boxes type thing.
The edge might be running the ball. We don't know that.
The edge might be running the ball, but I don't think it's going to get you there by having 4 tight ends either. Especially with the practice squad rules now, with your ability to move up guys. I don't even think you need to have him make the 53-man roster in order to be able to use the guy if you want.
You may not, but you might need a fullback. They ran 2 backs at times at Washington too. Who's that blocking? Who's that blocking back on the roster without Westover?
Yeah, that's a great question because I don't think that they have a real blocking guy, but they also might use one of the tight ends wide receivers like Jake Bobo for that too. Jake Bobo is an excellent blocker. And I just feel like they take advantage of those opportunities as well, especially with them having guys like Derek Young who can also block. And I think there are
Derek Young hasn't been healthy in 10 years.
Derek Young is good when he's on the field, which is more than you could say for D. Eskridge at least. If D. Eskridge made the team, man, Derek's making the team.
He done.
They both have health issues.
We will see.
Young at least shows you something when he's on the field. You know he's there, and D. Eskridge is just a disappointment.
Eskridge is explosive until he gets a concussion.
No, that was D. Eskridge that got the concussion.
That's what I'm saying. All right, we got to move to line, don't we?
We do. Okay. All right, tackle. Tackle got better, just addition by subtraction, in my opinion. Well, this is by subtraction by getting rid of Jake Curhan.
The boy Jake Curhan?
Yeah, he's gone.
Hey, they can send Stone Forsythe with Jake Curhan wherever he went.
He is still here. I think he'll make the cut. But I would say the biggest difference, obviously, you still got Cross, you still got Lucas. You're hoping for a healthy year from the both of them. You hope. I still have questions about Abe Lucas. I really want to see him have a healthy year. Concerned about that need for him, but he did have the procedure in the offseason. You hope that does some good. The biggest thing I think they did was just upgrade the backup position. They have a true, actual quality backup in George Fant, who I think he was good. I think he started for the Jets. Wouldn't love him as a starter, but he could start in a pinch, right? And I think the drop off just isn't off of a cliff when you go from your starters to Forsythe is a guy that you're all right if he's like a 4th tackle, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Like he's a guy, if he's on the roster, that's literally where he should be. That's at the bottom of the depth chart. He should not be your backup. That's clear. It's been clear for some time to me now. And so finally, I think that at least is better. That makes the room better, in my opinion.
I think it wouldn't surprise me to see Forsythe go and they keep either Raekwon O'Neal or Michael Jarrell. I think Jarrell probably ends up on the practice squad, but they like him. They liked him enough to pick him in the 6th round. So I think that 4th tackle could be O'Neal or Jarrell instead, because at least those two have some upside, whereas Forsythe is just a big body. But I agree. I think the big impact is you bring in George Fant. He can start in a pinch. He's not great, but he has starting experience. It's not throwing Jake Curhan out there, right? And that's a very big upgrade to know that right tackle position has someone like that. The other thing to watch is it Charles Cross from his rookie year where there was talk about the Pro Bowl, right? Or is it Charles Cross of last year who maybe not have been healthy, but did not look great? He did not look like a top 10 selection. If Charles Cross is back to what he was his rookie year, I think they're in business, right? That plus Lucas, but I still think I still think that, we're going to see a lot of games started by George Fant. And that does make me a bit nervous. So slight upgrade at the position, but I can't say I'm comfortable with it. We could never see Abe Lucas. We could be in a place where Abe Lucas never plays another snap, right?
Yeah.
Because of that knee. At which point now you got Fant starting, you got Forsythe, Jarrell, O'Neal, whoever being that backup, and now Smith is under siege again, just like last year. So we'll see what happens. I do think it's a step in the right direction. Guard
Guard is worse. No question. Guard is worse. I think
over Damian Lewis and Bradford last season.
Yeah, guard is worse. Yeah, Tomlinson, I'm sorry, but if they think Tomlinson is going to be anything for this team, and right now, it seems like he may very well be your starting left guard. And his performance has fallen off of a cliff the past 2 years, not just one, the past 2 years. The guy's been in the league forever, and he was never a mobile guy. He doesn't even fit the scheme of that this team would want to run. I mean, they got all the rest of their guys are mobile, but him, he's just kind of there. I think they got stuck with needing a body, and so they got him. I don't think that he ever really was a goal in terms of somebody they really truly targeted. At least I hope not. But anywho, I don't love that guy being your left guard. No, I hate it. And if it's going to be Bradford, I still think he struggled. Now, there is some upside, at least, with Bradford, where you don't get that with Tomlinson. But I think losing Damian Lewis and not having an adequate replacement is a loss, period. Because Damian Lewis was the best offensive lineman on that team last year. And that's not saying much, but he actually had, I think, around 77 PFF grade. I mean, he really was pretty good for his position. He had some flaws, but so do these guys, and their flaws are bigger, in my opinion.
All right, so my notes at guard. Position hasn't been this good in this good of a place in a minute.
No, you're kidding me.
No, I'm not. So Christian Haynes was supposed to go higher in the draft. Christian Haynes is a player who Steve Hutchinson was pounding the table for. Everything that I've seen from him is that he starts day one at right guard. Okay.
Yeah.
And that right guard is going to be solidified with him there. If you spend a third round pick on him, that's what you expect from him. I saw what happened in the draft room with the Seahawks waiting for Haynes' pick to come up, how excited they were, what that weight looked like. I'm a believer, right? Left guard.
Okay.
Left guard, you brought in Tremaine Ankrum from the Rams, who was a backup, big dude. I think he stays a backup. I do think there's upside with Bradford, as you said, specifically as a run blocker. Tomlinson was a former first round pick, right? Which doesn't necessarily mean everything, but he has played. There's a reason why he's been sought after at times, right? But here's the thing with him. You plug him in, you expect him to be a veteran and not make mistakes, but certainly maybe not be great. But now you've got a plan behind him. If Bradford started most of last season. If he takes a step up, now you've got a player who is slightly above average in Bradford playing left guard if Tomlinson falters. The other thing is
movement space playing left guard. Neither one can play in space.
Then you can talk about moving Haynes then. I also think we get stuck on which guard does what. I think both guards can do both, right? Or both guards you can switch responsibilities from right to left. I'm not hung up on which guard is doing what. If your road grader is at left guard, then the right guard is going to have to do more pulling. The other thing is, I think Laumea is a player. Laumea is the guard that they took out of Utah in the 6th round.
Right.
And I think he changes the he adds talent to that room and nastiness to that room. I've read a ton of folks who believe that Laumea and Haynes are going to be the starting guards for the Seahawks after this year, right? Because Laumea is that good. So, and we see guards all the time picked in the 4th, 5th, 6th round. So to me, now you've got Bradford and Laumea, who are 2 dice rolls, right? But have tons of upside potential. You have veterans in Ankrum and Tomlinson to plug the hole for now. I like where the room is. There's depth. You have a potential, in my opinion, a potential Pro Bowler in Christian Haynes. And there are upside plays. It's not, you're not pulling the random, checker off the street from the supermarket to come in and play guard, which is what I felt like they were doing for a long time under Pete Carroll. To me, they've invested resources in this line that they haven't done previously. And I'm excited specifically about Haynes. But, would I have liked to have seen them sign a guard of higher upside than Laken Tomlinson? Sure. I think they would have liked to have done that. But I don't think he is. I think he's going to be an average left guard until Bradford or Laumea prove that they're ready. I like it.
What have you seen us play the last 2 years? It's really good. It's
been but look good. At it. I wouldn't say it's bad, and I don't. But I'm not looking at grades either, right? I don't think it's bad. I think he's been probably slightly below average, right? But if you have these other, we can agree to disagree. We'll see what happens. But to me, he's not a turnstile, and if he's not a turnstile at guard, then we're good.
I'm not sure he's not a turnstile. Maybe that's where we disagree. I think he's a turnstile. I really do. I think he's an immovable turnstile. I think he's Stone Forsythe.
No. He's more talented than that. He's more of a technician.
He was. I think Stone could give him a run for his money right now. I know that's a tackle versus a guard, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of their flaws as players. Now, here's what I would agree with you. I think their depth, if I had to put an asterisk in that statement that you originally made, I would say their depth is at a better place than it's been in a long time. Mm-hmm. I would not say the position is at the best place it's been in a long time, because I think they're missing a starter quality. Like, I think that left guard spot is, they don't have a true starting caliber player that's there. They're missing that. But the depth, 100% agree with you. The upside, 100% agree with you. All of that is there, but I think that there's such a big hole at starting caliber player that's missing still, that as excited as I am about the depth, I'm super, super geeked for this team next season, right? Like, when they have an opportunity to fill that big hole that I feel is at that starting left guard spot, I know that next year that can be a top 10 line potentially, depending on how these guys develop. So I think they're building in the right direction, but I can't quite say this team is in a better position. It's sort of the upside and the depth doesn't make up for missing a starter caliber guy when you play the 49ers twice a year. So to me, I think you guys.
We've been talking about Tomlinson all year. You know that, right?
Yeah, we're gonna be talking. Yeah, we are.
And I think if you plugged in Bradford now, Bradford would give you average play. I think that's enough. If it was Bradford,
he's too inconsistent, particularly against your division rivals.
Yeah, but he's also another year of maturity, another year of growth, and a different offensive line coach, right? Scott Huff could come in and be a different type of coach, and you could see some transformation in some of these young players. Obviously, that's what they expect. Obviously, that's what they want to see. So I don't know. I think the clay is there to mold with Bradford, and then you make Tomlinson your third guard, which is a good place for him to be, at least according to you.
Yeah, that's where he should be. I really feel like I would love Bradford as the number 2. I would love Tomlinson as the number 3. Mm-hmm. No one's number 1 at that left guard spot, and I really just worry about that scheme fit. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. Bradford, yes, is more mobile, but that wasn't his game, even when they drafted him.
Well, Laumea is a beast.
He's that right guard.
I put Laumea in the same place as how I talked about Holani. Like, just watch out for those dudes, man.
Yeah, that's legit. I think they could beat, like, the trenches. I think that's a place they could have an extra man there. But he's still at right guard. Now, that right guard position is stacked. It's so stacked, and I'm super excited about that. The left guard is just where my biggest concerns are. So anyway, we'll see where it fits. But all right, let's keep it moving. Yep. Center. Really curious as to your thoughts. Right now, ESPN has Nick Harris as a starter and Olu still as the backup, but I'm sure you might disagree and switch those.
I have them switched, but Nick Harris is not. It just depends on what they want from the center position. Because yes, I think Olu is talented, and I think he should start. Nick Harris is undersized, but he is a good technician, and he was a very good center at the University of Washington. So honestly, I'm okay with either one. I think that whatever center they start is going to say something about their approach, right? Because Olu is just a little bit more stout. But I'm happy with either of them. I'm rooting for Olu, but I'm happy for with either of them. And I think that the center position is in a decent place, right? I don't think it's going to be a sieve at center. And that's a big deal, really. Your line, if they can be cohesive, what you can't have is a weak link. And center's not going to be that weak link in my mind. If the tackles are healthy, they're not going to be weak links. I think Haynes is a strength. If they're healthy, the tackles aren't going to be a weak link, if healthy.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm waiting.
No, you're waiting for my left guard one, too.
I'm waiting on you to get to left guard. So I'm doing.
When Bradford starts over Tomlinson, I'm going to be okay with it.
Now, if Bradford starts, I do feel better. I mean, the worst fear I have is Tomlinson starting. I'm just gonna be honest with you.
I ain't even worried about him like that. I'm not worried about him.
Oh goodness, I'm like out of my mind concerned. I'm so poor Gino. It would be better than last year, but poor Gino. So I will say, I think I agree with you. I think I liked the room better, a little bit better last year, and that's just because Evan Brown had more starting experience than Nick Harris has. So I'm just going to go that experience edge. And I felt like I think both are guys you can rely on. Nick Harris, they seem to be interchangeable in terms of like level of play, right? I guess Nick Harris would have more upside because he has had that starting experience. You might look at that and say it's better. I'm going to say it's slightly worse, but I think Olu taking a step forward in year 2 is a big deal as well. I'm comfortable with the position regardless. I just think on paper, there's an argument to be made. There's a slight downgrade, but I think the risk, not the risk, but the reward is a lot higher than it was last year too. So this is a group that could surprise you.
So it's crazy because we look, and I know we're about to move to defense, but you look at the offense as a whole, and you can look at every position on this offense and say, okay, I see the plan. I see the backup plan. If we need to flex and throw the ball more, I see the plan. If we need to control the ball and run the ball more, you see more Farrell Brown and AJ Barner instead of Fant. You can switch out the guard, for a more run blocking guard. If you need to go 2 wide receivers, you take Lockett off the field because he's so small. Like there's just if you short yardage, you got Charbonnet. You want to be more explosive, then you might run McIntosh out there, even if K9 is hurt. Like there's so much flexibility and there's depth. It's not the kind of thing where if there's one injury, the whole offense is shot, right? And I love the fact that I can have some confidence in the backups and that you can be multiple. You don't have to be exclusively one style of play on offense because of your personnel. They did a lot of great with the roster construction and kind of on the margins that make me really excited to see what happens this year. On the offense, I give them probably B+, A- in terms of what they've done in this offseason to make this offense better.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I think, I'm going to lean B+. The left guard thing is still a glaring thing in my mind. It gives me nightmares. It gives me anxiety thinking about it. But because it is the only true weakness on this team, on this side of the ball, I'm trying to like let love live, and maybe they can make a midseason acquisition, provided they work out the cap situation that allows them to, if absolutely needed, upgrade that position. Maybe you never know, but maybe an undrafted rookie is an unheaded hero. I don't know. I'm throwing sticks at the wall and hoping that helps with that. But let's see, man. We've been going for about an hour now. And that's just the offense. I'm breaking this thing up into a series. I don't know if we got time.
It's up to you. We can do that if you want to do defense next time. We can certainly do that next week. I'm down.
Yeah, I think let's do that because I don't want to rush through this side of the ball is so important, and it's literally the head coach's side of the ball. They revamped a lot of things to this defense, a lot of things to talk about in regards to it. So let's wrap here, and we'll talk about defense next week. So anyway, what anything you got going on the Mariners? Seems like it's in a high kick. You got that.
Yeah, they Mariners depressed me this last week, losing 3-4 to Minnesota. I just posted if you like rants, I don't go on them often on the Mariners cast, but if you like rants, I posted one today. Had a little comment about Emerson Hancock and how was being celebrated by Mariners fans for his filling in for Brian Wu. And I don't know what numbers y'all looking at or which games y'all looking at, but not the same ones as me because Emerson Hancock was trash. So I went on a little bit of a rant with that, but 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday right now with the Mariners cast, a lot of fun. And as you see with the Marshawn Lynch jersey and the Michigan hat, I'm getting ready for football season.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, be sure to follow the show at Ethos Seahawks. So give us a follow. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts and how do you see the roster? Is it better or is it worse overall? In the meantime, that's all the time we have for today. That's it. We're out. And as always,
go Hawks.